Welcome into our latest Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Brunner. Hear Me, See Me is a mental health awareness initiative of WIBW TV. As part of that, here on the podcast, we have conversations with people sharing their stories, maybe raising awareness of a particular issue. Today, we're going to do both. Melissa Owen is the leader of an organization called Beacon for Hope Suicide Prevention. They're located in Emporia, Kansas, which means their focus is specifically on veterans, since the city of Emporia is the founding city of Veterans Day. Melissa is here today to share her story. Welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
And it is kind of logical. Why did you choose veterans as the focus of this organization's mission?
It's more than just veterans for our organization, but being in Emporia with the founding city of Veterans Day, my heart is very full for veterans. We have amazing veterans there located in Emporia, and they don't get a lot of support, we feel like, when it comes to mental health. You know, we don't have a local VA services that are in Emporia anymore, so we have a lot of veterans who travel. So we wanted to be sure that we were a resource for them if they were struggling, or to be able to route them to where they needed to go.
Do you have service members in your family, or is this just a situation where you've always been around them?
I've just always been around them. Car shows really is what brought me to veterans, to be perfectly honest with you, about 3 years ago. Meeting all these amazing veterans in their cars, and how their cars actually were a self-care item for when they came back from being overseas, being in service, having endured trauma, loss. So hearing their stories really made an impact on me, and how can we reach more veterans? Well, through cars, and so that's kind of snowballed into being able to find other ways to reach them as well.
How long has the organization been around?
7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
So the veterans thing really is kind of this second half of the organization's history.
Yes.
Backing up, what was the motive for founding the organization 7 years ago?
I lost my sister Carrie to suicide in 2006, and I needed a way to heal. I needed to find my own path and own journey of how I could connect with other people that have lost a loved one to suicide, and especially somebody who had lost a sibling to suicide. I'd met a lot of people who had lost a son or a daughter, but nobody who had lost a sibling. And it was hard, and I felt very isolated, very alone. You didn't talk about it. You know, I grew up in an age where we didn't talk about mental health in school, in high school, even in college, really. And now we're in a society where it's relatively, you know, free to, I love how it's so open to talk about now, and people are really reaching out and giving resources and support, but finding that connection to somebody who's had that type of loss is difficult. So I wanted a place for myself to heal, and to provide a healing space for others who have endured what we have endured.
How old was Carrie when she passed away?
She was 33.
33 years old. Tell me about her. What kind of person was she? I think sometimes we forget that there are real people behind these stories that had lives.
Yes. Oh my gosh, she was an avid KU Jayhawk basketball fan. I'm a season ticket holder. Got season tickets for my dad so they could go every year. It was amazing. Highly intelligent. Held a master's degree. Just very educationally smart, just very quick-witted, very independent. She really thrived on her independence. Was able to go to beautiful places, to go to concerts. Loved the Moody Blues, was her favorite band, and so she would fly to San Diego, fly to Vegas, just for the concert. And loved animals. I think she liked animals sometimes more than people. Like,
because animals don't judge.
That's right, that's right. So just a very caring individual, yes.
What was going on in her life?
She had a lot of physical issues that were going on. In particular, she had an injury that she'd had several surgeries on, and every surgery was supposed to be the one that would fix her physical pain. And unfortunately, every surgery failed. And so, you know, mentally, that was taxing to her. She was losing her independence, and that was huge to her because she wasn't able to work like she wanted to. So she was becoming more isolated due to not being able to get out and do the things that she liked to do. And it was just, you know, small things just kept compiling. It was a multitude of losses, you know, her financial independence, her personal independence. She couldn't drive due to the medication that she was on, so she could only drive locally and wasn't able to come to Emporia to see us because of those medications. So there was a lot of loss that was happening.
As a family, were you realizing that at the time?
At the time, yes. We didn't really know how severe it was for her because she hid it well. There would be instances where she would break down because it was just too much and she was overwhelmed. But as a family, you know, we were there to support her and, you know, take her to the different doctors and try to find different therapists, you know, just using all of the tools that we had at that time to help her. But unfortunately, you know, it wasn't enough.
Did anybody realize, because you're right, people hide things. It's part of, we've heard that in these stories that we've shared throughout, that people have shared even for themselves personally. They were very good at hiding things.
Yes.
And then we also hear from those left behind that, we can't help, we can't fix things that we don't know about.
Right.
Did anybody realize, because she was good at hiding how bad things were for her, did anyone realize really how this was affecting her?
I don't know if we did. She would say things that were, that she was feeling suicidal, but at that time, we were caught up in the midst of not being educated of, well, people who are suicidal, they don't talk about it. They don't tell you that, they really feel that way. So we definitely took her serious, and she was very open with her medical doctors. And that was another thing, she was very honest about how she was feeling and such. And so they would try to prescribe her a different medication when, unfortunately the medication, she needed more than medication. She needed that, that mental health support as well.
As a sister, what was it like to get that news, and how did it impact you?
Oh, it was devastating. It was, I remember I was driving when I got the news, and I can't remember parking or I didn't know what to do, and all I could think about was how I needed to get home, because I lived in Manhattan at the time with my family. And so trying to figure out, we had 2 young children, 2 years old and 4 months old, and so trying to navigate, okay, let's just pack up and go to Emporia, and that's what we did. And it's kind of a blur. I don't remember a lot of it, to be perfectly honest, during that time, because I was just it was surreal. It was like everything was moving around me, but I was standing still, because, this happens to other families. It doesn't happen to my family. And we've never had an unexpected loss like that before. And so not knowing what to do, what to feel, who to reach out to, it was very overwhelming and devastating.
I imagine you were a little angry.
Yes, I was angry. Because she was the older sister. It was always the joke that she was supposed to be an only child, and I was a surprise, and so that was our joke growing up. And here I felt like she abandoned me, that, how she left me, and she wouldn't be able to see, her nephew and her niece grow, and, and be there for my parents, as we go through life and such. And so, yeah, I was very, very angry.
How did you work through that?
Honestly, for about 5 years, I really pushed it down. Until I came to a point where I needed an outlet. I needed that connection with somebody. And fortunately, we had moved back to Emporia. And of all places, our local county fair, there was a table set up that was a suicide loss support group. And I probably walked by that table, I don't know how many times, probably half a dozen times before I got up enough nerve to approach it, because, I think of the stereotypical support group. Everybody has to share, and I certainly wasn't ready to share. I wasn't sure that I wanted to, being back in my hometown, to be kind of identified as somebody who had lost a loved one to suicide. What would people think? How would they judge her? Not me or my family, but her. But I was able to go and connected with, it was just two women, and it was amazing. And really connected with them, and every Tuesday we would meet. And actually one of the ladies, she was one of the founding members of Beacon with me, because she had lost a son who I had gone to high school with. And so I knew about her son, was able to share memories that I had with him, with her, and we just really bonded and just really had this passion to prevent families from having to go through what we go through.
Do you recall, was it an organization that sponsored this support group?
It was the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a national organization that I got involved with first. And then it was probably 2 or 3 months after that, I was organizing the first walk for the organization. So that's how I kind of eased into building a community of support, being involved in something like that.
Do you remember, was there any one piece of advice or information that you learned during that time going through that support group and finding the support group that made the difference for you? I mean, what helped you understand?
That it's okay to share their story. It's okay to, when you hear somebody who loses somebody like to cancer or car accident, something, or a heart attack, something very sudden, there's no judgment there. People are very supportive, very empathetic with you. And that when you share your story, the importance of sharing your story of your loved one. Yes, they died by suicide, and back in 2006, you didn't hear a lot about people speaking publicly, not even, with celebrities. So, when you tell somebody how your loved one dies and you say suicide, I found myself, I was comforting the other person. a lot because they were uncomfortable. So learning how to make it okay was really what I learned, that make it okay to talk about, making it okay to kind of an opportunity to educate somebody else about suicide and warning signs and resources, especially if they have a loved one who they might be struggling, that, you know, not openly talking about it, or they're, you know, they're afraid to come forward, and to advocate, learning how to advocate for not only yourself, your loved one who's passed or who struggles, but for somebody else too. So learning not to be quiet about them is what we really learned.
And one thing I want to make sure that we interject at this point and along the way is that if you recognize yourself in anything that Melissa is saying, or that you are hearing or recognize about yourself from what Carrie experienced, please know that the 988 National Suicide Lifeline is there for you 24/7 for you, or if you're worried about a loved one, they can help you with some advice as well. So we want to make sure people know about 988.
Yes.
And if you had advice for people who find out about Carrie and find out about your story, what would it be to do? I mean, did I handle it okay by just saying, who was Carrie? Tell me about her.
Absolutely.
Is that what you want people to do?
I do, and I think a lot of people are timid to do that because they think it's triggering, you know, and I love that people respect that boundary of asking first, you know, if you tell me about her. And the first couple of times that happened, I was so used to people being afraid to ask questions that and then I was afraid to talk about her, to share her with other people, because I was so protective for so long because I was afraid to talk about my experience, that I love it when, you know, tell me about her. What is she like? And I find myself now, I just volunteer. Oh my goodness, my sister would have loved that, you know, or she would have loved you, you know. That it's just very easy to share that with her, to keep her memories still here with us.
I think part of education as well is educating the family members left behind on what they'll experience.
Yes.
What would you like people, siblings, because you said parents, there are a lot, you're right, there are a lot of support groups for parents.
Yes.
As a sibling, what would you like people to know?
That there are others that know what you're going through and that you are not alone. Don't ever think that you're alone. You know, the 988, I love 988 because they're a wonderful resource. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you know, or you're feeling like the world is on your shoulders, you know, please call them, reach out, you know, until you're ready to kind of share your story with maybe friends, you know, that are close to you. And don't isolate yourself. It's very easy to isolate yourself in your grief, because grief will come in many forms. You know, we talk about the sadness, the denial, and then the anger phase. You know, I almost felt guilty for feeling angry, you know, but that was just something that I had to work through, and we all go through that with any type of loss. So don't be afraid of your grief journey, and if you have lost somebody, especially a sibling, that there are support groups online for that as well, and that you would be surprised that if you reached out, you will find others who have lost a loved one like you have.
That's all after the fact, though.
Yes.
You worked through things. It took you, if my calculations are correct, it took you 10 years before you founded Beacon for Hope.
Yes.
What led you to do that? And the story, I guess the origin story, if you will, of Beacon for Hope, to create that.
I enjoyed working with the national organization. I really did. But one piece that was missing from the national organization was being able to really kind to impact local communities with funds you were raising, you know, with things you wanted to do that were unique for your communities. When I worked for them, I was their college outreach person. I love college age, so I did a walk at every university here in the state of Kansas. It was wonderful, but each community was different. They all have unique needs depending on what part of the state that we're in. And it was a struggle to be able to provide specific services or needs or resources in the different regions of the state, just because of their own, you know, policies that they had. So I really wanted a grassroots, hands-on, you know, hear from Kansas, understand, you know, what the geographic land is and all of that, and be able to utilize funds of what do you need? What do you need in your area? What are the resources you want in your office, your organization? We can create those. We can print them off for you. It's no cost to you. There's no strings attached. We just want to get the resources out. So being able to have control of providing that really unique service for anybody that contacts us. What are your needs? Is it teens? You know, is it elementary school? Is it high school? Do you need us to table? You know, colleges? Or, you know, just the community in general that needs information, that we're able to have that flexibility and have that ability to be able to do that with no strings attached.
Do you find yourself working with other local organizations, or how then does Beacon for Hope function?
Yes. Oh my goodness. We have so many amazing community partners. It's really unreal. And this year, I'd say within the last 6 months, the amount of people across the state who have contacted us It's really been amazing. So we work a lot with, we want to be able to provide not only our resources, but I think one misconception about suicide is it's not just one thing. It is not always a mental health condition that is the driving factor. It is financial, it's financial, it's if home security, it's having a job, it's food security, all of these things. So we really try to educate that when you have somebody who's lost a job, who's about to lose their home, doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from, the impact that makes on somebody, and that allows hopelessness to come in. So we're trying to really educate about hope. Here are resources. We work with our Kansas Works where, hey, they can help you with your resume. Here's job fairs that they provide. Here's career fairs. Here's training that they can do for you. We just did a car show over the weekend that was for food insecurity for Flint Hills Technical College for their students of, hey, we understand college is hard. They have a pantry. We wanted to raise food items and money for them to be able to get things for the pantry because that's one last thing that is a barrier for them to be successful. So just being able to educate, on the different aspects of suicide, because we feel like that any organization that suicide fits, it's everywhere. It doesn't discriminate. It's every profession, it's every walk of life. And so we just want to be sure that we're there to be able to support in any way that we can.
That's where your symbol comes in. That's where your symbol is so perfect. It's
Yes.
a lighthouse.
Yes.
How does the lighthouse symbolize what you're doing?
So it is like, the beacon for hope. You see that light, you think of yourself out there in the water in that darkness, when you feel so dark and there's that light.
Feel like
there's
you're going to drown.
Exactly. And my sister loved lighthouses. So it was only fitting that, the logo have the lighthouse in it.
And you're right. I mean, part of it is addressing the things that lead to, because yes, there's the mental health component. Obviously, something happens that your mind is not in the correct place, but it's those contributing factors.
Yes.
It's not necessarily because you have a mental illness per se that
Right.
then leads to these. Sometimes it's those extenuating circumstances that lead to the mental illness or the mental health challenge, however you want to refer to it.
Absolutely.
And if we can address some of those root causes, we can provide the hope and prevent all the other. Sometimes counseling is going to be involved.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And we are a very big advocate for counseling too, and if medication with that counseling, absolutely, whatever helps, whatever helps you get to, have a very fulfilled life. And we understand that not everybody, counseling isn't for everybody, but we do ask, that you try. We have a list of, our local community health centers that we have across the state of Kansas, 988. If it's, hey, if it's just this one time that you're really struggling, please utilize that. The texting line, if you're more comfortable in doing that, just please reach out to somebody, because one of our biggest roles, what we're trying to do is to help ease the burden on our health and our mental health systems of trying to get individuals to realize that they're not alone, that there are these resources, other people they can connect to. Our hashtag is always Hope Links Us Together. Before it turns into a crisis situation, so we can help ease that.
You do have a great mental health partner in Crosswinds in the Emporia region. It's amazing what they do and how much they serve, and in different languages,
Yes.
because not anyone who speaks any language, as you said, mental health doesn't
Right.
discriminate.
That's right. That's right.
And
Yes.
veterans. So then you came across veterans.
I did. Yes.
What did you learn about them that made you realize, what are the unique needs and challenges that a veteran might face?
Number one is how during the military, it seems to be the common theme of, even when the active duty were realizing they were struggling, it was that hesitation to reach out that, hey, I'm struggling, I need some help. There was that stigma. That in military, there was such that big stigma to be able to reach out for help. So the veterans that I get to interact with now it's amazing how their mentality has changed from that's what they learned and that's what they went with. With so many of us, I was that way too, where you don't talk about it, you don't talk about it outsiders, just keep it in your family. But it's amazing how their language and their conversations has changed of, hey, you know what, we're getting to the age where we need to be reaching out to one another. We need to be checking in on one another. We know that we've had struggles. We know somebody struggles, and it's okay to ask, and it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get a resource and to go get that mental health. I work very closely with Frank, who is here with me, and he, visits the VA here and has always been such a big advocate about the groups that he's in, and tells me about, just having that connection of being able to share those stories, how it has helped him over the years. And so being able to talk openly about it and kind of relaxed events like our car show, it's interesting the conversations that just organically come about. too, and talking about mental health. You know, here you have these amazing men and women, and they're talking openly about mental health. And at first it can be kind of surprising, you know, because of the stigma, but it is becoming more and more common that there's such the support for it and wanting to really display it themselves, that here's a 988 number, press 1 for veterans, and you're going to speak to a veteran. You know, there's help and you don't have to struggle. Here are the VA services, you know, please go see them. There's so many available for us. I think it's just amazing.
What have you learned about the lifestyle of veterans that perhaps can enlighten some people who maybe are freshly out of the service? Is it that, you talk about the stigma, I guess, you know, you picture a soldier or an airman or a seaman, and they are very stoic.
Yes.
They obey commands, yes ma'am, yes sir, no ma'am, no sir. So there's that portion of it. They're not supposed to show emotion.
Right.
But then there's also the scheduling. You know, they have a regimented schedule that they're on. There's a mission that they're focused on. Someone tells them what to do.
Yes.
They have that ready-made group that's always with them. But then they return to civilian life, and I mean, their units are from all over the country.
Oh, yes.
That unit's not there anymore. They don't have anybody telling them what to do. And then they're overwhelmed with emotion.
Yes.
Am I accurate in that portrayal?
100%. Yes, I think that overwhelming factor of, I have all of these emotions, you know, I've been told what to do every day, I've had this strict schedule, and now it's kind of, now what? You're kind of just left to your own devices of sink or swim out here, you know, in civilian life. And I think a lot of times it's very scary. It's very scary, and that's where the isolation piece comes in, you know, that fear of, I'm not sure what to do or how to do it, who the resources are, who do I go to, you know, for whatever, you know, need that I have. And so there's a lot of isolation, which turns into a lot of, you know, can be anger as well, because here they've served their country and they're feeling kind of lost. And so being able to provide resource, just that connection, you know, not being a service person myself, but providing that connection to either a local veteran to, hey, why don't you talk, I think you should talk to this person, you know, because I know that they are an empathetic person, you know, have been where you've been and have been through their journey for years now and is able to help you make the first step. I think that's important. I hear stories about our American Legion and our VFW about making those connections in there for newly, you know, servicemen that have come back, and how it's hard for them to walk in those doors because they feel, you know, a little out of place because, you know, maybe they didn't see action on the front lines like others. And maybe, you know, there's this discussion about how what is actually a veteran, you know, well, you know, I wasn't, you know, a first line in infantry, so am I really a veteran? Should I be recognized as one? But it's amazing when you talk to veterans, they're like, you are a veteran. You were there no matter what you did. You were a part of support. You were helping to keep us alive. You were there for us. And so coming back, you know, I think is that wanting to still give back and be part of that camaraderie, which is amazing to see no matter what branch of service that you're in.
Right, because what I experienced doesn't even begin to touch on those who perhaps might be experiencing some of the more PTSD associated emotions and feelings from things that they may have seen and heard and done and experienced that truly are, when you say we can't understand, it would be difficult for anyone who hasn't been through those experiences to understand.
Yes, absolutely. And so having kind of like that buddy system, you know, to really be able to tell their story openly, you know, that, you know, the newly, you know, retired service person, you know, may not be ready yet because they're not sure what they're experiencing getting out, you know, to be able to get those diagnoses or realize that, yes, they are dealing with PTSD, but not sure what avenue they want to take, you know, but hearing those lived experiences is the #1 way you can connect with somebody, no matter what your experience is. Some little piece, if just a small piece you can relate to, can really help that person get on the right path for them getting the help that they need and have a very amazing life.
How does somebody know when they're ready to seek out resources or find help?
You know, I think it's different for everybody. I think you get, like, for me, it was, okay, I felt ready. I felt like I was ready to talk about it. I think when you are ready to talk outside of the people that are closest to you, where you can see the benefits of, okay, if I tell a little bit of my story or go to an event or some sort of gathering, even if it's just a lecture about mental health, you know, specifically maybe what you're experiencing, that you're kind of identifying yourself as, I understand, I'm, you know, as one of the people in the room, I understand. And I think when you see somebody who's suffering, especially, where if you can share a little bit of your story to help elicit hope out of them, that, I know it's really hard right time and it seems impossible to get through the next day because you were just so devastated and you were under this weight of so much loss and hurt, that I think that helps a lot of people being able to help others.
Are some days still like that?
Absolutely, they are.
I think that's very important to say,
It
because
is.
a lot of times people feel like, well, gosh, I thought she was over that by now.
Yes.
And I think that to hear from someone else that it's not something you get over.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
You simply learn to make it part of your life.
That's right. And that's what I tell people. And I've had that comment before, it's been 18 years now, and I'm still working through it. I am. When I host events, it'll be the day after. I kind of recluse back to take it in because it's very overwhelming. It's very, the day of the event, it's amazing to see the connections, and I love seeing people connect and know that there are others out there that feel like they do and have experienced, what they have experienced. But it's also overwhelming to me to know the reason why I'm doing it,
What would you have liked to say to Carrie?
Like to say to her that just to hold on, that I know it was really hard and she had endured 10 years of it, but that just not to give up.
Well, you just said that to a whole lot of people, and you're saying that to a whole lot of people every single day through Beacon for Hope. And now we're both going to cry because it's hard. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that, when we say there are the ups and the downs, and I apologize for bringing you down, but I'm also so grateful that you shared Carrie's story.
Thank you for allowing me to.
She was a real person and someone who was loved. And I think that if people don't hear anything else, and they're struggling, just to know that you are loved. And as you said, there is hope. There are people out there who want to connect you with resources. We've mentioned 988 several times.
Yes.
Sorry for making
That's
it
okay.
But there are people out there who can and I know some days are so hard to say that. Mm-hmm. But also as survivors of people, as people left behind, some days are going to be harder than others.
Yes.
But you see the hope and the light.
I do.
As well.
I do.
Every time you remember Carrie and the love and the joy that she brought to people around her while she was with us, that is joy that are imparting to other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always talk about support. I talk about self-care and your support system. A lot of people feel like they're isolated, they don't have support. So I always talk about my onion. We all have layers. So I tell.
That's why we cry.
That's right. That's right.
It's the onions.
So it's educating people on identifying those people for support. So I'll start with a question like, who would you call if you ran out of gas? Oh, well, there's one person. Well, who would you call, if you needed help with your taxes? There's another person. And then who is that person in your center of your onion that they are your ride or die, that they know that if you just called and said, I'm really struggling, who is that person? And then when people start identifying, my goodness, I have like, half a dozen or a dozen people in my life, they don't feel as alone. And that, I think that really instills hope that, okay, if I was in trouble, I could call this person and they would come. I could call this person. So I think it's really important to build that support system around you. I'm so honored to have the support system that I have and that I keep gaining from community members that I meet. It's incredible the feeling you get when somebody will walk up to you and say, you know what, when you spoke to me at this outreach event that you were at, you saved my life because I really wanted to end my life that day. Just by having a conversation, just a normal conversation, not even about mental health, but just a conversation. So the power of, are you okay? I think we really need, I know we're all busy and we're constantly in fast forward, getting to the next thing, but just taking a moment and recognizing, noticing people when they're struggling and just saying, are you okay? And being that ear, just for that 5, 10, 15 minutes can totally change the trajectory of somebody's life.
That is wonderful advice.
Yes.
Melissa Owen and Beacon for Hope in Emporia, Kansas. Fantastic resource. I so have enjoyed learning about your work and learning about your sister as well. And remember, if you are struggling, 988 is there for you 24/7. We also have a whole host of resources available for you on WIBW.com/hearmeseeme. So wonderful to hear you, see your story. And please know, we hear you, we see you.